the Emerald Tablet, also known as the Smaragdine Table or Tabula Smaragdina, is a compact or cryptic piece of Hermetica, right? Important word right there. Reputed to contain the secret of the prima materia and its transmutation. You hear this? It was highly regarded by European alchemists, okay, as the foundation of their art and its Hermetic tradition. Okay, this is where it was started, the whole Hermetic tradition, if you know what that is about. The original source of the Emerald Tablet is unknown, although Hermes Trismegistus is the author named in the text. And again, Hermes, we read earlier about Thoth, is also known as Hermes in Greek, so it's the same person. You're going to hear that back and forth a lot, so don't get confused. Its first known appearance in a book written in Arabic between the 6th and 8th centuries. Very important again, Arabic. Its first sources in Arabic. Why Arabic? We'll see that later. The text was first translated into Latin in the 12th century. Numerous translations, interpretations, and commentaries followed. Modern occultists suggest that some Hermetic texts may be of pharaonic origin, and that the legendary 42 essential texts that contain the core Hermetic religious beliefs and philosophy of life remain hidden in a secret library. Some trance readings of Edgar Cayce reveal that Hermes, or Thoth, was an engineer from the submerged Atlantis who also built, designed, or directed the construction of the pyramids of Egypt. It says in about 300 AD, Zosimos provided one of the first definitions of alchemy as the study of the composition of waters, movement, growth, and embodying and disembodying, drawing the spirits from bodies and bonding the spirits within bodies. In general, Zosimos' understanding of alchemy reflects the influence of Hermetic and Gnostic spiritualities. The word alchemy was borrowed from Old French alchemie, alchemy, taken from medieval Latin alchemia, and which is in turn borrowed from Arabic alchimia. The Arabic word is borrowed from late Greek chemia, with the agglutination of the Arabic definite article. This ancient Greek word was derived from the early Greek name for Egypt. Okay? Chemia, based on the Egyptian name for Egypt, Chem, black earth, as opposed to the red desert sand. So the medieval Latin form was influenced by Greek chemia, meaning mixture, and referring to pharmaceutical chemistries. The central figure in mythology of alchemy is Hermes Trismegistus, or thrice great Hermes. His name is derived from the god Thoth and his Greek counterpart Hermes. So these three people are the same entity, same person. Hermes and his caduceus, or serpent staff, were among alchemy's principal symbols. According to Clement of Alexandria, he wrote what were called the 42 books of Hermes, covering all fields of knowledge. The Hermetica of thrice great Hermes is generally understood to form the basis for Western alchemical philosophy and practice, called the Hermetic philosophy by its early practitioners. These writings were collected in the first centuries of the Common Era. Hermes Trismegistus, or Gistus, is purported author of the Hermetic Corpus, a series of sacred texts that are basis of Hermetism. And it says the name means thrice greatest Hermes, or 3 times great. Origin and identity, it says here about Hermes Trismegistus, may be a representation of the syncretic combination of the Greek god Hermes and Egyptian god Thoth. Greek and Hellenistic Egypt recognized the equivalence of Hermes and Thoth. Consequently, the two gods were worshipped as one in what had been the temple of Thoth in Khemnu, which the Greeks called Hermopolis. It says here, the Hermetic literature among the Egyptians, which was concerned with conjuring spirits and animating statues, informed the oldest Hellenistic writings on Greco-Babylonian astrology and on the newly developed practice of alchemy. In parallel tradition, Hermetic philosophy rationalized and systematized religious cult practices and offered an a means of personal ascension from constraints of physical being. Right? It says here, the Hermetica is a category of papyri containing spells and initiatory induction procedures. The dialogue called the Asclepius, after the Greek god of healing, describes the art of imprisoning the souls of demons or angels in statues with the help of herbs, gems, and odors, so that the statue could speak and engage in prophecy. In other papyri, there are recipes for constructing such images and animating them, such as when images are to be fashioned hollow so as to enclose a magic name inscribed on a gold leaf. Okay, you seeing what this is, Hermetica? Are you reading this with me? And again, Etymology Online says here, Thoth, ancient Egyptian god of wisdom and magic, hieroglyphics, and the reckoning of time. From Latin, from Greek Thoth, from Egyptian Tehudi, usually represented as a human figure with the head of an ibis, by the Greeks assimilated to their Hermes. Okay, same person. Hermetic, 1630s, dealing with the occult science or alchemy. Occult science or alchemy. From Latin Hermeticus, from Greek Hermes, god of science and art, among other things, who was identified by Neoplatonists, mystics, and alchemists with the Egyptian god Thoth as Hermes Trismegistus, thrice great Hermes, who supposedly invented the process of making glass tube airtight, a process in alchemy using a secret seal, hence completely sealed. Secret societies, secret proceedings, Masons. Also called Hermetism, is a religious, philosophical, and esoteric tradition based primarily upon writings attributed to Hermes Trismegistus, thrice great. These writings have greatly influenced the Western esoteric tradition and were considered to be of great importance during both the Renaissance and the Reformation. So can we discern? So let's continue. It says, regarding Hermetism, it says here, in late antiquity, Hermetism emerged in parallel with early Christianity. You hear this? Parallel with early Christianity, right? So in late antiquity, Hermetism emerged in parallel with early Christianity, Gnosticism, Neoplatonism, the Chaldean oracles, and the late Orphic and Pythagorean literature. These doctrines were characterized by resistance to the dominance of either pure rationality or doctrinal faith. The books now known as the Corpus Hermeticum were part of the renaissance of syncretistic and intellectualized pagan thought that took place from the 3rd to the 7th century AD. It says here, in modern era, in 1945, Hermetic texts were found near the Egyptian town of Nag Hammadi. So these are real, you see, they were found. One of these texts had the form of a conversation between Hermes and Asclepius. So Hermes ain't fiction, alright? A second text titled On the Ogdod and Ennead told of the Hermetic mystery schools. Alright, so this is what I was talking about, the mystery schools and these secret societies they started establishing with this knowledge that Thoth, Hermes, was teaching. It was written in the Coptic language, the latest and final form in which the Egyptian language was written. And it says here, according to Giza Vermes, Hermetism was a Hellenistic mysticism contemporaneous with the 4th Gospel. You hear this? Okay? And Hermes Trismegistus was the Hellenized reincarnation of the Egyptian deity Thoth, the source of wisdom, who was believed to defy man through knowledge, or as they say here, Gnosticism. So look how what he influenced as well. And Gilles Quiskel says, it is not completely certain that there existed before and after the beginning of Christian era in Alexandria a secret society akin to a Masonic lodge. Alright, so real quick we go to Online Etymology Dictionary, just real quick, just reference again, so we know, that it has a whole Hellenistic Hermetic beginning, this whole Egyptian, ancient Egyptian at least background, right? Now, looking at the word Egypt on Online Etymology Dictionary, what does it say here? The etymology says Old English, Egypte, the Egyptians, from French Egypte, from Greek Aegyptos, the river Nile, Egypt, from Amarna, Ikupta, corresponding to Egyptian Hakapata, temple of the soul of Ptah or Ta, creative god associated with Memphis, the ancient city of Egypt. All right, so hold up. Remember earlier we got the Aegyptus, that was a whole Greek god. They gave the name to this land in right there in that region of the world. They gave it under that name. But in reality, Egypt more was like the place where the temple of Ptah or the temple of Pa, because the P I guess is not pronounced. Much love, respect again to UBTV for the info, for the knowledge. And so Egypt again, this is a Greek word, Egypt. Remember, we're gonna see a video right after this about the true name of ancient Egypt, what they call it themselves, or at least what they interpret it, right, and based on their translations. But again, Egypt, it was a really, it's nothing to do with a landmass in Africa. It has nothing to do with a landmass in Africa. Are you seeing this clearly? It's more the temple of Pa, or the house of Ta, which was in association with Memphis, the ancient city of so-called Egypt. Memphis, we have a Memphis here in America, which is right next to our great river, which the Nile is a Greek word again, that means great river. So we have a great river, the Mississippi, which also has a city right next to it, called Memphis, right? This whole area was, known as Little Egypt. We know it's very fertile there. We know the mound builders are all over there. So where are we really talking about when we're talking about this temple or this mound of the house of Ptah, the creative god associated with Memphis? It says here, right in the bottom, it says strictly one of the names of Memphis. So it was really the name of Memphis. It had nothing to do. So where was Memphis? It was taken by the Greeks as the name of the whole country. From there, the Greeks, remember, they gave it to Aegyptus. They grabbed it and was like, yo, let's just call it Aegyptus after our Greek god, Aegyptus, the whole country, as the name is the whole country. Strictly it used to be the name just for Memphis, or the temple where Memphis was, right? This temple, this place. The Egyptian name Kemet, now the Egyptian name Kemet means black country, possibly in reference to the rich delta soil, not to skin complexion. Rich delta soil, not complexion. Kemet means rich or fertile soil. The Arabic is Mizr, which is derived from Mizraim, the name of a son of biblical Ham. So are we going to go biblical when we talk about Mizraim or Memphis? Because that's really what they get the Memphis from after Mizraim. They get the Memphis or Menes. Mizraim, Memphis, and Menes, same place, same person, I'm sorry. Mizraim, Memphis, or Menes. King Menes, the very first official, supposedly, right? If we're going to go biblical, if we're going to use Memphis, well, you have to use Mizraim. Again, it's the name of a son of biblical Ham, Hamite. Egypt, Aegyptus, Greek, Kemet, fertile soil. None of these have to do with a landmass in Africa. So right here, this all kills it. Anything you got to show me, talk about when you talk about Kemet and all this and ancient Egypt and Kemet, none of that talks about any landmass in Africa. All right, Kemet, again, one of the ancient Egyptian names of the country, Kemet, KMT, or black land, from Kem, black, is derived from the fertile black soils, not from skin color, not from the skin color of the people. They're talking about the fertile black soils, fertile black soil, rich, deposited by the Nile floods. All right, the Nile is a Greek word. All right, it means great river. Distinct from the desert or red land of the desert, the name is realized as Kimi and Kima in the Coptic stage of Egyptian language and appeared in early Greek as Chemia. Remember, we just went through the Chemia, etymology, alchemy in my old video, of alchemy, chemistry, or alchemy. Another name was Tamari, land of the river bank. Tamari, land of the river bank, the great river, the real one. The names of Upper and Lower Egypt were Tashim and Seshland and Tamihi, Northland, respectively. All right, so again, nothing about a landmass in Africa, because Kemet means rich, fertile, black soil. We have plenty of rich, fertile, black soil. So real quick, origin of the name Nile, it says here in the ancient Egyptian language, What language? The Nile was called Iteru River, which meant great river. Iteru River, which meant great river. The word Nile comes from the Arabic Nil, Nil, which in the Greek language was translated as Nilos, meaning river valley. All right. So where in any of this does it say a river in Africa? Where does it say this a river in Africa? You get what I'm saying? The etymology does not prove that it's located in Africa, meaning really great river, great river. All right, so great river, right? So Mississippi River, right? We go down to the name and significance. It says here the word Mississippi itself comes from Mississippi, the French rendering of the Anishinaabe or Ojibwe or Chippewa people, right? Or an Algonquin name for the river Mississippi. Great river. Same thing. Mississippi is the great river. All right, and just one more. It says here Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources. Information about the upper Mississippi River. Well, we just want to know this. It says Mississippi is an Ojibwa, Chippewa Indian word meaning great river or gathering of waters. Gathering of waters. Great river or gathering of waters. Now we go back to the origin of the name Nile. It says in the ancient Egyptian language, the Nile was called Iteru River, which meant great river. In the Arabic and Greek, it meant river valley, or just like saying gathering of the water, gathering of the rivers, gathering of waters. River valley, great river. Go back again, meaning great river, same thing. So where's the real Nile or great river or the gathering of waters? Where is that? All right, so again, think about it. Where can you really see a great gathering of waters or a great river? Look at this image right here. Look at all the river tributaries that come into the Mississippi or the Great River. The Great River, the original Great River, a real great river, a real Nilos. Nilos, that's what it means, Nilos. The word Nilos, Nile, means great river or a gathering of waters. Look at this. Look at this gathering of waters. Look at all this water gathering together. Look at this. All right. So we got along the whole Mississippi River, we got mounds. All right. So where's ancient Tamari? Where's the real Nilos? Where's the ancient Egypt for real? And now we're going to read from this book right here I found. Not Out of Africa. How Afrocentrism became an excuse to teach myth as history. This is by Mary Lefkowitz. Fair use. Thank you for writing this so we can read it. All right, so I'm going to go belly flop to a part in the preface of this book, and she says here, talking about why they focus on Greek history, most of the Afrocentrists. It says here the explanation is that only 160 years ago, it was widely believed that Egypt was the mother of Western civilization. Although shown to be untrue, it's not true. As soon as more information about Egypt became available, the earlier beliefs survived in the mythology of Freemasonry. All right, so Freemasonry was the ones that were giving Egypt the credit. What Egypt? And why Freemasons choosing Egypt? Right? So the mythology of Freemasonry. The Masons believe that their rituals derive from Egypt, but in reality, their rituals do not originate from a real Egyptian source and are not nearly so ancient as they suppose. Rather, they derive from the description in an 18th century novel of an Egyptian mystery system, which served as means of providing university-level education and as the source of ancient philosophy. This system, although wholly fictional, was in fact based on Greek sources. All right, get what they're trying to tell you here. Right, we're going to get into this a little bit more, but we know most of the ancient Greek before it was supposedly translated, right, in the 1800s, supposedly the Rosetta Stone, right, we're going to get to that, but before that, supposedly all the history we were getting, it was from the accounts of the Greeks. It was all Greek history we were getting of the Egyptians. All right, but it's really more mythology of Freemasonry. The mythology, the Masons, right? From an Egyptian mystery system that was actually brought out in the 18th century, meaning the 1700s. This system, although wholly fiction, was in fact based on Greek sources, and although no one knew it at the time, these ancient sources were themselves inaccurate because their authors interpreted Egyptian culture in terms of Greek custom and experience. I remember Egypt was the etymology. It's a Greek word. We're going to get to that. Greek customs and experience terms of Greek. Although the Egypt, in parentheses, and these accounts never existed. It never existed. What do you mean never existed? You see what they're saying here, right? Wake up. The ancient writers nonetheless believed it, and the Freemasons still talk as if they had some direct connection with it. All right, they say, oh, we are the reincarnation of the pharaoh, blah 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 blah, and that's what they do. We're going to talk about this a little bit too. All right, but they're the ones who are, and they have a lot of power, right? Influence. Because of their conviction that what they are saying is true, their reports can appear credible, especially to people who do not have an extensive knowledge of the ancient world. I want to read here what she's saying. Continues, says, in the 4th chapter, I explain why certain Afrocentrist writers have come to believe that there was in ancient times an ancient mystery system. I will argue that in reality, this system was an invention of an 18th century French writer, the Abbé Jean Terrasson, right? Look him up. The mysteries he described were in character Greco-Roman. In other words, when Afrocentrists accuse the Greeks of stealing from the Egyptians, the Egyptian ideas that they are describing are not actually Egyptian, but rather Egyptian in parentheses as imagined by Europeans who had no direct or authentic knowledge about Tamari. Remember, it's not even Egypt, it's Tamari of America. Remember, that's why they had to make it up. To say that the Greeks stole their philosophy from Egypt is tantamount to saying that they stole their philosophy from themselves. So she has a point here. She's saying, how could the Greeks have stolen it from the African, right, so-called Egyptians from ancient times, if even the basis of what they're basing their whole modern Egyptology is based off this whole Egyptian mystery system that was created in the 1700s by this French guy, based on what Europeans imagined Egypt to be. All right, so we continue in the book. In this part, she is criticizing somebody we're going to get to know here, in case you haven't heard him, one of the people who actually are part of the whole Pan-African origin doctrines, Cheikh Anta Diop. All right, it says in his influential book Civilization or Barbarism, which was originally published in French. All right, so he wrote it in French. All right, is he African? Yeah, he lived in Senegal and they spoke Wolof, but is this an ancient French person, French family? There you are. You're going to read how he is aristocratic. All right, we're going to see. So he wrote it in French in 1981. The Senegalese humanist and scientist Cheikh Anta Diop undertook to construct a usable past for African people. He regarded Egypt as the source of much of what is called Western civilization. He suggested that according to the Greek mythology, the Egyptians brought their civilization to Greece during the time of the 17th or 18th dynasty in Egypt, 1574 to 1293. Diop's suggestion that Danaus was Egyptian is slightly less far-fetched. He was Egyptian in the sense that he was born in Egypt. What Egypt? Again. But according to the myth, his family was actually Greek in origin. His great-grandfather, Epaphus, was born in Egypt after his mother, Lo, the daughter of the river Inachus and Argos, had come to the Nile Delta. So he's saying these people were actually Greek. All these people he's calling Egyptian, a lot of these people were actually Greek, especially, I'm going to show you, Danaus, actually the brother of Aegyptus, the son of Belus. All right, these are Greek gods. All right, so let me just show you real quick. Aegyptus, right? We're just in Wikipedia. We're just, surfing the wave right here real quick. All right. It says in Greek mythology, Aegyptus or Aegyptus was a legendary king of ancient Egypt. Ancient Egypt, right? Tamari, the real Egypt, the real Tamari, ancient Egypt, not modern day theme parks, right? UB News, much love. Now, it says here he was a descendant of the princess Lo through his father Belus. All right. And of the river god Nilius through Akuri, his mother. So these are all Greek people. He was just born in ancient, and where in Tamari he was born, not even in Africa. It says in Tamari, ancient. We're not talking about an African, a landmass in Africa. Aegyptus was the son of King Belus of Egypt and Akiori, a Naive daughter of the Nile. He was the twin brother of Danaus, all right? He's the twin brother, so his brother Danaus, king of Libya. Some say Aegyptus is Jacob. Some say Aegyptus is Jacob, so that would make Danaus Esau, his twin brother Esau, in Greek genealogy. But that's something we're going to research and do a video about. We're going to get into that. I just wanted to show you, all right? This is where the names are coming from. It's not even what they're calling Egyptian word. This is Greek words, Greek history, Greek genealogy. Again, we're going back to the book. She's letting you know, but according to the myth, again, his family was Greek in origin. All right, here's a little figure. She got a little family tree. All right, Zeus, Lord of Libya, Poseidon, so Belus. So Aegyptus' granddaddy is Poseidon, Libya and Poseidon. Belus is dad, Aegyptus, Danaus. Aegyptus and Danaus. So she continues, she's saying Diop, the Senegalese, Pan-African says that he ignores the fact that the Greeks regarded Danaus as a Greek. In the case of the hero Cadmus, he overlooks the Greek tradition that Cadmus came to Thebes in Greece from Phoenicia, not from Egypt, from Phoenicia, which Phoenicia was in Canaan, the Holy Land, again, back home here, right? And accepts instead a hybrid origin. According to Greek belief, Cadmus came from Tyre in Phoenicia, or Canaan, and founded the Greek city of Thebes. Because Diop is also saying that Cadmus is African, right? There's no proof of that. In history and mythology that we have recorded, he's coming from Phoenicia or Tyre, all right? And he settled the city of Thebes, the Greek city of Thebes. All right, so real quick, we go to, just want to go ahead and talk about the person. She's criticizing Cheikh Anta Diop. All right, when it comes to Pan-Africanism, he's one of the, what they give credit to, leading, so it says here, was a Senegalese historian, anthropologist, physicist, and politician who studied the human race's origin in pre-colonial African culture. Though Diop is sometimes referred to as an Afrocentrist, he predates the concept and thus was not himself an Afrocentric scholar, according to who. However, the Diopian thought, as it is called, is paradigmatic to Afrocentricity, so it's the same thing. His work was greatly controversial, and throughout his career, Diop argued that there was a shared cultural continuity across African peoples that was more important than the varied development of different ethnic groups shown by differences among language and cultures over time. So he's saying it doesn't matter how many different cultures and nations and tribes, all that matters is the African, right? Heritage, try to group it into one place. Right? Diop's work has posed questions about cultural bias in scientific research. Cheikh Anta University, formerly known as the University of Dakar, is named after him. He got a whole university after him. Diop's work have been criticized as revisionist and pseudo-historical. He's a revisionist and he's pseudo-historical. According to Marie Hughes Warrington, Diop's work were criticized by leading French Africanists, but they and later critics noted the value of his work for the generation of a politically useful mythology. All right, we can still use your work as mythology. We'll just name it like fiction. It's just mythology. Let's just call it mythology. Thanks, Diop. That would promote African unity. Let's just keep promoting African unity through mythology. Mythology. All right. Now, real quick, early life and career. Who is this guy? Born in Teoutou, Durbo region, Senegal, Diop belonged to an aristocratic Muslim Wolof family. Muslim, religious, right? Muslim, where he was educated in a traditional Islamic school. He's Islamic, right? Diop's family was part of the Morite Brotherhood. All right, we're going to get into that. Morite Brotherhood, the only independent Muslim fraternity in Africa, according to Diop. According to Diop, he obtained the colonial equivalent of the Metropolitan French Baccalaureate in Senegal before moving to Paris to study for a degree. So he was very involved with France and speaking French, and he wrote his first book in French and all that. And now, what's a baccalaureate? Look at this. The baccalaureate, often known in France, colloquially as the bac, is a French national academic qualification that students can obtain at the completion of their secondary education by meeting certain requirements. It has existed since the Middle Ages. So what is these certain requirements? Who gets this diploma? Look at this, from France. The guy in Senegal from France. All right. So what's the Mouride? The Mouride Brotherhood. It says here the Mouride Brotherhood. The Mouride Brotherhood is a large tariqa, right? A tariqa is a school or order of Sufism, or specifically a concept for the mystical teachings and spiritual practices of such an order with the aim of seeking hakika, which translates as ultimate truth. A order, this is a fraternal, a secret society. Sufism especially, we already got into this, who was involved with that. We're talking about where, the concepts that Drew Ali had based on, why they were calling him an Egyptian adept, where he was talking about an ancient Egyptian order he was a part of, that he learned, that he had to initiate and join, and it was under this guy, Ghani Jamal. Sufism goes back to the ancient Magi's and the Persian magical teachings, esoteric, Zoroastrian teachings and all that. And then that's where a lot of the branches of those same teachings, you get the Theosophical Society of Blavatsky and all these other, the Golden Dawn, the Order of the Golden, all these other teachings, and also Egyptology, even this Hermetic teachings, the Hermetic Egyptian, so-called Egyptian ancient, and we've seen that it wasn't really true. We heard earlier, we're going to get a little bit more there earlier. Next, it was more of a Freemason mythology. Now we see that these people are what? Mystical teachings, spiritual practices. All right, so he's involved with his family of Mourides. Amadou Mamba, the Mouride Brotherhood, was founded in 1803 by this person right here. And I just want to show you that Amadou Mamba was a Muslim mystic. All right? Mysticism is popularly known as becoming one with God or the Absolute, but may refer to any kind of ecstasy or altered state of consciousness, which is given a religious or spiritual meaning. All right, mysticism. A term mysticism has ancient Greek origins with various historically determined meanings. Again, going back to what? Greek mysticism. Greek, he's a what? Muslim mystic. All right, so again, from an aristocratic Muslim Wolof family of the Mouride clan. Mysticism, Sufi mystic order, ancient mystic order, Sufi order, all right, descendant. What does that have to do with America? And what does that have to do with ancient Egypt? Continuing the book, it says, by now it should be clear that Diop has supplied his readers only with selected and to some extent distorted information. When he reports what the Egyptian priests told Diodorus, he says nothing about the Greeks' own earlier accounts of their origins, nor does he advise his readers to remember that in any case all of these stories are myths, not history. As such, they cannot provide the precise information about the timing of events or the movements of people that we would now like to possess. This is chapter 4, says the myth of the Egyptian mystery system. Even after the 19th century, scholars showed that the reports of Greek visitors to Egypt misunderstood and misrepresented what they saw. The myth that Greek philosophy derived from Egypt is still in circulation. The myth is not only one believed, but it is being taught as if it were the truth, and as if no progress had been made in our knowledge of Egypt since the 18th century. How the myth has managed to survive despite all evidence and scholarship that demonstrates its falsity, it's a fascinating story. In this chapter, I will describe how the notion of Egyptian legacy was preserved in the literature and ritual of Freemasonry. It was from that source that Afrocentrists learned about, all right? That's where they got these Afrocentrists, later to be known as Pan-Africans, right? They got their literature and rituals from Freemasonry, and they learned about it, and then sought to find confirmation for the primacy of Egypt over Greece in the fantasies of ancient writers like Herodotus and Diodorus. In the next chapter, I will discuss how and why in this century Afrocentrist writers went beyond the claims of the Freemasons, who speak only of Egyptian origins and not of deliberate theft on the part of the ancient Greeks. If there were no mystery cults in Egypt, where did the idea of an Egyptian mystery system come from? George G. M. James, the author of Stolen Legacy, appears to have been misled by relying on Masonic literature. rather than standard histories of religion, as his principal source of information about the Egyptian mysteries. James cites a book written in 1909 by the Reverend Charles H. Vail, a 32nd degree Mason, called The Ancient Mysteries in Modern Masonry. In this book, Vail speaks of public mysteries such as those celebrated by Egyptian priests in the rites of the god Osiris and in the schools founded in Greece by initiates. He quotes directly from only one ancient source, Plutarch's on Isis and Osiris, which he claims is a description of the mysteries of Isis. With a lot of these mystery teachings, and when they're talking about, yeah, this religion that started Christianity, that all started in Egypt, all that stuff, that most of that literature comes out of Thoth. That's who the source is. All right, let me just read something before we go on. It says here, on the 42 books of philosophy, cataloged by Clement. Remember, these 42 books were written by Hermes or Thoth. All right, we got this in my Thoth video. Go check it out. The principal source of the notion that there was a corpus of Egyptian philosophy derives from yet another, and even later source, the so-called Hermetica, or discourses of Hermes. All right, Hermetica, Hermetic teachings. These are writings that were supposed to have been composed at the beginning of time by Hermes the Thrice Great, or Trigemistus, grandson of the god Hermes, who was identified with the Egyptian god Thoth. All right, Thoth. The pagan writer Iamblichus, who believed that these discourses were authentic, says that one of the authors he consulted knew of 20,000 and another 36,525 such treatises, but the 2,000 discourses attributed to Hermes that have come down to us are not even Egyptian at all. So the ones they verified, rather they are treatises written in Greek centuries after the deaths of the famous Greek philosophers they purport to have inspired. So they actually verified some of these documents or whatever scrolls, and they found that they're actually written by Greek people. As Isaac Casabon showed in 1614, this small collection of writings could not be as early as Iamblichus and other ancient writers thought, because its authors were much influenced by the very writers that Hermes, the Thrice Great, was supposed to have inspired, especially Plato and his much later followers, the Neoplatonists, not to mention the Hellenistic Hebrew writers known as the Gnostics. Alright, Hellenistic. There is no record of any Egyptian language original from which they were derived. Listen to this. This is deep. Alright? They start creating this whole ancient Egypt. Because it was all here in Tamariu, split up between our stories, split up in different. It became known as so-called Egypt, this mystery Egypt, right? That they created. These secret societies. There was no record of any Egyptian language original from which they were derived, and it is clear from both their style and their vocabulary that they could not have been composed without the conceptual vocabulary and rhetoric developed by the Greek philosophers in the 4th century BC. It's all Greek. Hermetic teachings, Masonic teachings. Continuing in the book, it says here, a striking quality of Freemasonry, it's its imaginative attachment to the religion and symbolism of the Egyptians. The Egypt to which the Masons referred to, of course, an imaginary one, but this was the Egypt that was rediscovered in the Renaissance for convenience, all right? It was an imaginary one, the one they taught us. I shall call it mystical Egypt, to distinguish it from the historical Egypt that was first explored scientifically and understood only in the 19th century. They're talking about when they actually went into that place over there, they call it Egypt he's talking about. But other than that, the ancient one, they didn't know anything about that. It was all imaginary. Listen to what they're telling you. Remember, they didn't know how Egypt started. It was a legacy. Remember, it's all a mystery. That's what they told us all our life. So again, she's going to call it a mystical Egypt. European writers learned about mystical Egypt from the writings of the church fathers. They knew the Hermetic treatise known as Asclepius because it had survived in Latin version, and they supposed that it was one of the books of Hermes to which Clement of Alexandria referred in his description of the procession of Egyptian priests. So around 1460, when a Greek manuscript containing most of the Hermetic treatises was brought to Florence, Cosimo de Medici thought that it was more important to translate them than the works of Plato, because Egypt was before Greece. Hermes was earlier than Plato. As a result of this huge historical error, the Hermetic corpus was given serious attention. and its fictions were widely accepted as truth. All right, Hermetic teachings, remember, all that comes from Thoth. Although the theology of Hermetica, now why keep saying Thoth? What's the significance of Thoth? You're saying, well, Thoth is Egyptian. No, Thoth is actually what? He said it himself. From where? Atlantis, or in the Book of the Dead, he's a Westerner. He's a Western from a distant Western land. He was from a land where he lived in a city and a lake, and there was two volcanoes there. There were volcanoes in the city and the lake. All right, that doesn't exist in Egypt today. There's no volcanoes there. Get what I'm telling you? So Thoth, he known the Emerald Tablets, he was Atlantean. All right, where's Atlantis? So-called Atlantis. We're talking about ancient America here. We're talking about the Western Ethiopians, as the Greeks would call the Amarukas, the Western Ethiopia. Continuing in the book, not out of Africa. It says here, although after 1614 it became known that the books of Hermes were not what they appeared to be, and some 200 years after that, it was shown definitely that Horapollo's interpretation of hieroglyphics were wrong. The fundamental notions of Egypt expressed in these works and in the Renaissance philosophy connected with them were preserved in Freemasonry. The Masons believed that their initiation rituals was dated from the earliest times and that it was modeled on the mysteries of Egypt and of other ancient countries. They preserved, as part of their own secret symbolism, alchemical science, again, alchemy, science and hieroglyphics, that is, hieroglyphics as interpreted by Horapollo. One of these is familiar to everyone in this country. It is the Great Seal of the United States, the unfinished pyramid, whose detached top is an eye surrounded by brilliant rays. Some of our founding fathers were Freemasons, including George Washington himself. The Treasury Department now explains that the pyramid is unfinished because the government is new, and that a sunburst and the eye above the pyramid standing for the deity. Why did they choose these particular symbols? As Masons, they wished to emphasize their connection with the great civilization of Egypt. The explanation of the eye surrounded by a sunburst can be found in Horapollo. The eye of the hawk symbolizes sublimity and divinity, and it is associated with the sun because of the sharp-sighted rays of its vision. In Masonic symbolism, an eye and a triangle radiating rays of light stands for the grand architect of the universe, the architect. So we have this supposed Freemasonry of the ancient Egyptians, which really came about in the 1700s. All right, again, this is all from the Hermetic libraries, right? We already learned what Hermeticism and where that comes out of. And this book says here from Manly P. Hall. Most of you know a lot of this esoteric, following of these people like Manly P. Hall and Aleister Crowley and all that. It says here Freemasonry of the ancient Egyptians. It says here there are two sections of this volume, each of distinct significance. The first is Hall's essay Freemasonry of the ancient Egyptians, which is principally analysis of the Osiris legend. We're given some references to Atlantean civilization. The analysis is sober and comprehensive, but the most worthwhile part is Hall's own proposed interpretation, which constitutes a few final pages of the essay. Again, all these ancient Egyptian teachings that we had, it always has been based upon this Europeanized view or this Masonic view of what they pictured ancient Egypt like, and their legends, right? And legend. All right, so it says the second part of the book is publication of the Krata Repoa. Now, this is important, the Krata Repoa. What's the Krata Repoa? All right, much love and respect to Lotus for the knowledge, for the drop. Lotus put me on to the Krata Repoa and how they are basically very influential to a lot of other secret organizations or societies or orders, the Krata Repoa, in particular the Rosicrucians. We're going to see. It says an 18th century manuscript purporting to detail the initiatory system of ancient Egypt. All right, supposedly. So this came about when? The 18th century, was that 1700s? Right, 1700s. It was purporting supposedly to detail how it was in ancient Egypt. Krata Report first appeared anonymously in German in the late 18th century, drawn on a wide range of classical sources for its details. Some of those sources were sympathetic to the ancient mysteries, but others were certainly hostile. Given the strict laws of secrecy that surrounded the classical rites, we can only assume that the best informed and most sympathetic accounts from antiquity were never disclosed. The English text published by Hall is based on John Jarker's translation from the French of Anton Baillieu, who published his version in 1778, 1700s. All right, was when this all started. This whole ancient Egyptian perspective that they gave us. In the Krata Repoa. All right, it says here, or initiations into the ancient secret society of the Egyptian priest. 1785. Look at this. Nick Farrell, Rome, 2009. He translated it. It was written in the 1700s. Says the introduction. This small and largely forgotten work was influential in the development of the Western mystery tradition. Western mystery traditions of the mystery schools, the secret orders, concepts, and the belief in the idea of a particular type of initiation system or the mysteries were first formed by this text. All right, Hermetic. Historically, its claims are bogus or unlikely, but have been upheld by groups that used it as a template, including the European esoteric Freemasonic groups. These in turn influenced the English-speaking Rosicrucian orders, all of them. The Rosicrucians, we're going to see who was under the Rosicrucians, including the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, the Hermetic Order. This is Aleister Crowley and all these people that were in it. I forget what this means, but this is another order of Aleister Crowley that was in the ancient Masonic order of the something like that, Rosicrucians. And we're going to read a book of theirs letting us know that ancient Egypt was really in America. Builders of the Aditum and Dion Fortune. The book was popular in Germany, and I was given a German copy by the Sodalitas Rosicrucis and Solis Alae. But I just want you guys to know Krata Report. This is what they're getting all this ancient Egyptian Freemasonry and influence in these orders and the Rosicrucians. And we continue to have this website here, the squaremagazine.com. It says Freemasonry and Egyptomania. Look at this image right here. Freemasonry and Egyptomania. It says here, however, the Egyptian Rite says, however, probably the largest influence on Freemasonry with regards to its possible Egyptian roots were the free thinkers of the Age of Enlightenment. In Europe during the mid to late 1700s, again in the 1700s, a revival of the Renaissance, Hermetism, Hermetic teachings, right? Hermetism and alchemy. Alchemy again became the rigor with irregular offshoots of Masonry sprouting across the continent. Much of the Egyptian revival Freemasonry, spirituality, and theory was in fact merely a mixture of Christianity, Judaism, Kabbalah, and alchemy. Kabbalistic Kabbalah. It's all the same. It's all from the Krata Report. It's all from this 1700s Masonic mythology, right? Freemasonic mythology, as we learned earlier. A mixture with mixing a little bit of Christianity, Judaism, Kabbalah, and alchemy, none of which had any proven basis in the roots of actual ancient Egypt. None of them can prove they were talking about ancient Tamari, the real Tamari, or what they created this idea out of Egypt, this place that they were envisioning, this beloved land, Tamari, this beloved land, this promised land, this ancient fertile soil of a great river, a great place, right? Civilization that had plenty of corn and all that. They were envisioning, they created this Masonic mythology and created this Egypt, this Greek version of Egypt, right? But there's nothing to prove their basis in the ancient roots, and we're more from a romanticized notion than factual base, all right? This core group of European Masons were proponents of the purported esoteric origin of the order. They added Freemasonry to the melting pot of traditions, religions, and mystical thought that had been brewing since the Renaissance, including the idea that alchemy and the Hermetic arts had filtered down from the teachings of ancient Egypt. They made that up. They brought that out in the 1700s. They made it up. They said it started in Egypt. They made that up. You can start to see the pattern. There's a lot of people saying this, showing you. The concept of ancient initiatory or mystery schools was too enticing to pass up, and it became the focus point of various new Masonic rituals with a supposedly Egyptian theme. The combination of dirge, the invocation of a deity, and Freemasonry was present in various new rituals. The Rite of Mizraim, 1738, Martinez de Pasqua's Order of Ilus Cohen, 1767,
Cagliostro's Egyptian Rite, 1784, and later a variant on Mizraim's The Rite of Memphis, 1838, which further morphed into the ancient and primitive Rite of Memphis, Mizraim, in 1889. You see, it started getting popular during these times with these orders, these secret societies. There was no real connection, people. Listen, there was no real connection, all you Pan-Africans. There's no real connection to ancient Egypt or Tamari or over here in America within any of these rituals. The etymology of many of the Egyptian words are often portmanteaus or corruptions of existing mystical phrases, or in other cases, inventions by the authors. Inventions by the authors, the Greek words, most of them. This is further compounded when one considers the language of hieroglyphics had not yet been deciphered until much later via the crucial breakthrough of Thomas Young and Jean-Francois Champollion, and even then were not widely published. So that was a big point right there. You got to emphasize on that, right? Listen, if you guys don't understand, Europeans supposedly didn't know anything about Egypt or even how to read or interpret hieroglyphics before the 1830s. You understand that? So how are they interpreting ancient Egypt in the 1700s if they couldn't read it? This is what he's talking about. How are they deciphering stuff if they hadn't even learned how to supposedly decipher it, because they only learned it through the supposed Rosetta Stone that they found, right? Napoleon and the French. Now that's a whole mystery right there, all right, that we're going to get into and investigate. But again, he made a point right here. How did they have all this knowledge of ancient Egypt, but they couldn't even read hieroglyphics, supposedly, in mainstream? From these facts, one can logically surmise that at the time most of these rituals were written, they contain no evidence-based wisdom of the ancients. Much of the content had its roots in hybridized blend of biblical, Kabbalistic, or alchemical symbolism. The Rite of Memphis even managed to combine elements from Templarism and chivalry with Egyptian and alchemical symbolism. All right? It's all Masonic. It has nothing to do with being from Africa or a Pan-African. It's all Masonic symbolism. The quasi-Masonic orders were incredibly influential amongst the occultists and more spiritual Freemasons, and by the fin de siècle in the early 1900s, the New Age had well and truly dawned, the melting pot on the verge of boiling over. From the traditional history of regular Freemasonry, a many-headed hydra had been created, one that would invariably lead Freemasonry as an organization into centuries of ill repute. So that's how they put themselves on the map. You see, now we're ancient. We go all the way back to Egypt. We've been in order. We've been in clubs. No, they stole that knowledge. We already know that Freemasonic is the study of sacred geometry, of architecture, how to build the pyramids and all that. Mound building, right? Tolteci. So they stole this knowledge and they were like, okay, you know what? We gotta act like we're from way back. We gotta put ourselves in history. That's what they did when they created this ancient Egypt. So they created their reputation. To add insult to injury, Aleister Crowley. All right, Aleister Crowley, the figure later dubbed the wickedest man in the world, would attach himself to the perimeters of Freemasonry. Why is he called the wickedest man in the world? From the fusion of two rites of Mizraim and Memphis and the ensuing intervention of John Jarker and Theodore Roos, the rites metamorphosed once again into the quasi-Masonic mixed gender Ordo Templi Orientis. All right, that's what the OTO meant. Again, that was from all these people as the founders. You see, it's all based on the same kind of Sococrata report, or this ancient Egyptian Freemasonry, which is really holistic Hermetic teachings that were revived in the 1700s. The Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn was another short-lived esoteric Masonic styled order founded by Freemasons William Wynne Westcott and Samuel Lyndon McGregor Mathers, both members of the Societas Rosicruciana. You see, Rosicrucian in Anglia. Aside from the rituals, the European Freemasons lapped up anything that hinted of Egypt. Jean-Abbé Terrasson's novel Life of Sethos, taken from private memoirs of the ancient Egyptians, 1731, was an elaborate work of fictional fantasy. It's a fictional book, all right, and was a source of inspiration for Mozart's opera The Magic Flute. which combined both Masonry and ancient Egyptian symbolism. Mozart also wrote incidental music for Tammuz, King of Egypt, a play by Tobias Philipp, Baron von Gebler, Count Cagliostro, creator of the Egyptian Rite and self-styled Grand Copta, held seances in his Egyptian-themed salon in Paris. You hear all this? These people just playing make-believe. Goethe, 1749 to 1832, even wrote a play about it, all in 1792, entitled Der Grosse Copta, the Grand Copt. All right. So you want to fact check any of this? Feel free to let me know how it goes. All right. So it's very deep. Again, there's no historical basis on any of this as to lead to ancient roots. Beginning just real quick in this website, says here the AMR or the AMORC, the Rosicrucian Order, says the ancient and mystical order of the Rosicruces. And just to correlate, it says here the Rosicrucian movement, of which the Rosicrucian Order, AMORC, is the most prominent modern representative, has its roots in mystery, traditions, philosophy, and myths of ancient Egypt, dating back to the approximate 1500 BC. So that's the hijack. All right, we just realized, we just read, it was actually from the 1700s. So this is what they were trying to do. This is how they get their initiates and recruit people, talking about it's from the 1500s BC. All right, so well, this brings us over to, I could keep going about the links of Freemasonry and the ancient Egyptian, perspective they gave us, this whole history that they gave us, and the connection of all this Hermetic teachings in ancient Greeks, really telling us the story. But it brings us to Kemetism, right? We know Kemet is black soil. We just saw the word definition, the etymology. It has nothing to do with a landmass in Africa. So what is Kemetism then? If it has nothing to do with a landmass in Africa, what is Kemetism? Now, there's three forms of this, all right? Let's go over this real quick. It says Kemetism, from Kemet, the native name of ancient Egypt, right? Native, remember, that means black soil. So they're not talking about Africa. It's a term for neo-pagan revivals. A term for neo-pagan, new pagans, revivals of ancient Egyptian religion, which developed in the United States from the 1970s. All right, this came about in the 1970s. This ain't ancient at all. There are three main groups, each of which take a different approach to their beliefs, ranging from eclectic to polytheistic reconstructionists. Now, the first one says here is Kemetic Wicca or witchcraft, right? Kemetic Wicca, also Tamari Wicca from Tamari, land of the two riverbanks. Another native term for Egypt, Mary, is an eclectic approach combining ancient Egyptian elements with Wicca, a religion based on pagan practices which utilizes witchcraft. All right, does that have to do with anything? Now, this one says Kemetic revivalism and reconstruction. A reconstructionist which include academic approaches informed by Egyptology, notably Kemetic orthodoxy. All right, now Kemetic teachings and orthodoxies, of the actual religion of Kemetic orthodoxy, is actually funded by Tamara El-Swida, a white lady, and Carrie Wishner's Akhet Hawat Hawar. And this is Tamara El-Swida right here, as you can see. All right, this is Tamara. She's the founder of Kemetic orthodoxy or religion. And yeah, she'd be having people dress up, but that's her right here. Yes, this white lady, the founder of Kemetic orthodoxy, Kemetic religion, right? Tamara El-Swida, okay? Now, the third they say is the Asr Asid of Ra Un Nefer Amen. All right, it's a syncretic Pan-Africanist approach targeted at the African diaspora, targeted at you, so-called African American, at the African diaspora. History and demographics says Kemetic revivalism appears in the 1970s with the rise of neo-paganism in the United States. The Church of the Eternal Source, promoting New Age receptions of Egyptian spiritualism, founded in 1970, and the Asr Asid Society, promoting Pan-Africanism, founded in 1973. All right, that started when? In 1973, Asr Asid Society. Who is this and what does that have to do with any of this? And Pan-Africanism and Kemetic today, Kemetic teachings. It says Tamara Suida's Kemetic orthodoxy, remember the white lady, following in the late 1980s and Kerry Wisner's Kemetic Reconstructionism in the 1990s. All right, this is where they get all this Kemetic stuff from. The movement is composed of a mixture of New Age, Wicca, and Afrocentrism. The latter in the context of Afrocentrist Egyptology, which emerged in the United States in the 1990s. You're stuck in the 1990s. When you're Pan-African, that's Afrocentrist Egyptology. This emerged in the 1990s, making ancient Egypt a black culture. All right. Oh, you see what they're saying? So-called black. This correlated says here in the late 1980s, Kemetism had become so popular in the United States that its adherents began to organize, create institutions, and develop different branches of the faith. In particular, an early leader of the movement was Tamara el-Suida, who will ultimately become responsible for the development of Kemetic orthodoxy. All right, personal Kemetic shrine. Says here, as a college student, Suida was a follower of Wiccan rituals. She was a witch, Wiccan, during a Wiccan initiation, right? She experienced a powerful connection with what she later understood to be several ancient Egyptian deities. She said she got in contact with the ancient pharaohs. That's just like the other like Blavatsky and all that, Aleister Crowley and all them. They said they talked to these ancient Egyptian deities. Are these really fallen angels? What are these things they're talking to? This led her to deepen her knowledge and interest in Kemetism, and ultimately she founded Kemetic Orthodoxy in 1989. We got the other one, that's the Asr Asid Society of Ra-Un-Nefer Amen. So first of all, who is Ra-Un-Nefer Amen? It says here, Ra-Un-Nefer Amen, born Rogelio Alcides Strong, on January 1944, is the founder of the Asr Asid Society, a Pan-African spiritual organization dedicated to providing Afrocentric-based spiritual training to people of African descent. All right, so to African descent, Afrocentric-based spiritual, Afrocentric, really? Is that what you guys are teaching in the Asr Asid Society, Afrocentric stuff? Or Afrocentric based spirituality? Really? Are you sure it's not no Greek Hermetic stuff? Are you sure it's not none of that? All right, so Rogelio Alcides Strong. So we're in the Encyclopedia of Black Studies. Encyclopedia of Black Studies. So it says here that Ra-Un-Nefer Amen I was born Rogelio, again, Alcides Strong. Rogelio in Panama, so he's Panamanian. Rogelio, that's a Spanish name, right? Rogelio, all right? The so-called Ra-Un-Nefer Amen I was actually a Panamanian born Rogelio Alcides Strong. And real quick, Strong history, family crest, coat of arms. Strong is a Scottish and Irish surname. Strong is an Irish and Scottish surname. So when I say Strong, and he's a Pan-African now, and now he was born in Panama. Now you tell me, can you prove to me he goes all the way back to Africa? Now it says he was raised by his mother and stepfather. So this ain't his dad. The Strong is not him. According to what it says here, his mom is Goody Koo and Bertram Strong is the dad. Goody Koo and Bertram Strong. So I did a little bit of genealogy. I can't find anything on a Goody Koo or that word or anything to do in Panama. Nothing. Even the Bertram Strong is difficult to find. Because this is supposed stepfather. He attended the Conservatory of Music, where at age 6 he studied piano and music theory. As a child, he also read periodicals and texted his grandfather's Panama's first dental surgeon. So his grandfather was Panama's first dental surgeon. That's a very important job. These are people who are well off. This is not a peasant poor family. Slave family doesn't sound like yet. All right, his grandfather was Panama's first dental surgeon who had become nearly blind. He read to his grandfather Times Magazine, Newsweek newspaper equivalent to New York Times, and philosophy texts such as Plato's Republic. As Strong attended a high school that produced Panama's president. So he went to a very elite high school, Strong. He's from a well-off family. You hear what I'm showing you, right? Where he studied history, political science, music, and literature. He read the works of Che Guevara, Pablo Neruda, and Jose Marti. As the youngest member of the Federation of Panamanian Students, he protested with the peasants who fought against Panama's ceding land to Costa Rica. After coming to America with his parents in 1960, he protested against the Vietnam War with Students for a Democratic Society. He also continued his spiritual search in 1962. He completely changed his diet after learning about the effects of vitamins and minerals on health. He concluded that divine spiritual potency combined with healthy living could solve the world's problems. During the 1960s, he participated in various Black Power organizations, Black Power, until he established his own group based on achieving higher realms of consciousness. Author members attempt to live according to divine laws from ancient theologies. All right, so Rogelio, this Panamanian guy, founded the Author Society, another word for Osiris, Author, right? Supposedly, so just again, it says here that it's a Pan-African religious organization. It's a religious organization. Again, religious. A lot of Pan-Africans try to come at the Hebrews or anybody using religion, and they're also a religious organization founded in 1973 by Ra'u Nefer Amen for the purpose of providing members a societal framework through which the Kemetic spiritual way of life can be lived, and to promote Rosicrucian values. Again, Rosicrucian values, the Rosicrucian Masonic order. Remember, the Rosicrucian comes from the Krata Rapoa. Remember, that's all Hermetic teachings. Remember, that's all Freemasonry. This is the foundation of all this supposed ancient Egypt, which was myths based on mythology, which was all Freemasonry symbology. So, wait a minute, Author Society, Pan-African. Wait, promoting Rosicrucian values? Rosicrucian values. You seeing this? All right, so we're in encyclopedia.com, and it says here the Author Society. It says the Author Society, a Rosicrucian body. All right, a Rosicrucian order, a Freemasonic, esoteric, this mythological ancient Egypt, this mythological, this fake Egypt, its Hermetic teachings. This Rosicrucian body, especially oriented to meet the needs of African Americans, was founded in the mid-1970s by R.A. Strong, Rogelio. Okay, his name was Rogelio. He's mi compa de Panama. Strong, formerly the head of the Rosicrucian Anthropological League. He was what? R.A. Strong, Rogelio Strong was what? The head of the Rosicrucian Anthropological League in New York City. All right, he was the head of it. Did you know that? Oh, you thought it was all about Africa and African spirituality, right? You thought he was just bringing back the ancestors' religion, right? You thought that he was he was just, promoting Africa, right? But he's from Panama, from a well-off family in Panama, right? With an Irish, Scottish surname, Spanish name, right? And he's a Rosicrucian follower, esoteric. When you go into the study of who he is, he was very esoteric. He taught a lot of, like they're saying, he had a lot of esoteric writings, and he was like a yogi. He was all into the whole Hindu culture as well, very yogi, meditative, Hermetic teachings, all that. Rogelio, yes, very little information can be found on him. Trust me, I tried. All right, but he was definitely the head of the Rosicrucian Anthropological League in New York City. It says under his adopted name, Ra'u Nefer Amen, has written a number of occult texts on Hermetic, again again Hermes, Thoth, and Eastern religions. What does he know about this? You know he's a Freemason. He also developed a unique tarot card deck. The program of the society is directed to people of African origin, and its literature regularly integrates more familiar cult themes with material specific to African American, emphasizing lessons in African American history and the accomplishments of Africans. All right, so he's basically letting you know straight up that he targeted so-called black people in America. He targeted with this Rosicrucian teachings, esoteric Hermetic occult teachings. So the Rosicrucian Anthroposophic League, Harlem, all right? It says that it's filed to be a nonprofit corporation on March 8th, 1935. That's how long it's been there, since 1935. So yeah, it's real. The Rosicrucian Anthroposophic League. Continuing, it says here, the Rosicrucian Anthroposophical League. It says the Rosicrucian Anthroposophical League was founded in 1932 by Samuel Richard Parchman, an astrologer and occultist. who trained with Max Heindel. All right, who's Max Heindel? During the 1920s, Parchman became a leader in the Rosicrucian Fellowship, founded by Heindel, which published his early writings. However, he broke away from the fellowship after Heindel's death and formed an independent organization out of the former Fellowship Center in San Francisco. Parchman is best remembered as the author of classic textbooks of astrology, mundane, and spiritual, which was used by many astrologers not affiliated with the League and later reprinted by the American Federation of Astrologers. All right, so let me just go down here. It says here that after Parchman's lifetime, League centers developed in both coasts, but in recent years, little has been heard of it. Its present status is unknown. It says here that in the 1970s, though, the New York League became the independent Osser-Osset Society. The New York part of the what? The Rosicrucian Anthropological Society became the Osser-Osset Society. Rosicrucians, the Rose Cross, all right, the Rosicrucians and all the history behind it. All right, that's the hijack. It's going to talk a little bit about some of the fraternities of the Rosicrucians. This is one of them. Several Rosicrucian groups have direct lineage from the Theosophical Society, Madame Blavatsky, right? The largest one being the Rosicrucian Fellowship funded by Max Heindel. So he was coming from Blavatsky's teachings. Max Heindel, who actually helped influence what? The other Rosicrucian Anthroposophic Society League. Heindel, born Carl Louis von Grashoff, was an engineer whose occult interest led him to the Theosophical Society shortly after the beginning of the century. By 1905, he was a Theosophical lecturer. Then in 1907, he traveled to Germany, where he appeared to him several times, one whom he described as an elder brother of the Rosicrucian order. He was sent to work with a knowledgeable teacher believed by most to have been Rudolf Steiner, founder of the Anthroposophical Society. You see where all this is coming from, and this turned to the Osser-Osset Society, Pan-Africanism, Kemetic. Listen. So what is the point, Kurimeo? Well, the point is, where's all that so-called African history when all this was just mysticism? Even the other dude, Diop, remember he was from the Muslim mystic order, mysticism, mystic order, who's going to lead back to the same people. Same people, these Persians, these same people, these Theosophical Society of Blavatsky, it's the same people she learned from that went out into the Muslim Islam world. Same people. All right? So where's ancient Egypt really when the supposed real one is all a myth? It's all Freemasonry symbolism. It's all Hermetic teachings. It's all hijack. So Ra'u Nefer Amen, right? So what's his significance? Well, to accomplish this goal, he has written and published several books on the subject of ancient Egyptian philosophy and spiritual culture, most notably the Metu Neter and the Metu Neter Oracle, the Metu Neter. All right. So I clicked on Metu Neter and it brought me to Egyptian hieroglyphics. How does that happen? Right? So I actually got volume 1 of Metu Neter volume 1 here by Ra'u Nefer, aka Rogelio, mi compa Rogelio de Panama. Rogelio. Rogelio, man, he was from an elite family in Panama. I want to see his African genealogy. Somebody please prove it to me. Now, in his book Metu Neter volume 1 by Ra'u Amen Nefer, right here, I just want you to I wanted to point out something. Again, shout out to Lotus for pointing this out to me, that a lot of these translations that they're getting, their so-called hieroglyphics translations and interpretations, like these Rosicrucian, these esoteric teachers, right? These Freemasons, it's actually from a lot of these same people, as in their same people, Germans, these Jewish people, these Germans, Nazi people. Like one of them is Adolf Ehrman. Adolf Ehrman. So Adolf Ehrman and Hermann Grappel says the hieroglyphic dictionary of Ehrman and Grappel in the 6 original volumes. This is a translation of it again. It's in the 1800s, and this is in German right here. So this is again written by that guy Ehrman and Grappel. It says that this dictionary is one of the greatest intellectual achievements of the 20th century, albeit known to few outside of Egyptology. Indeed, it is probably the greatest single achievement ever accomplished in Egyptological textual studies. All right, so again, they give the credit to these two guys right here. this Jewish German guy, Adolf Ehrman, and this Nazi Hermann Grapau. Yeah, he was a Nazi. Yeah, so this guy's a Nazi. So they're probably occultists too. May have some Masonic connections, but they're giving credit to translating it really good, and a lot of the today's modern sources or references is from their dictionary. So I just wanted to show that Ra'u Nefer right here, Rogelio, is quoting, right? This is his book, Metu Neter, Volume 1. It says, I will quote from Life in Ancient Egypt by Adolf Ehrman, Dover Press, which will prove very enlightening. You're going to be very enlightened by Adolf Ehrman, Rogelio's telling us. All right, so he's learning from Adolf Ehrman, right? Rogelio, let me show you again. Metu Neter, this is Metu Neter, Volume 1, right? Volume 1 by Ra'un Amen Nefer, right? He's quoting Adolf Ehrman. It says, which will be enlightening. All right, he's quoting Adolf Ehrman. Adolf Ehrman. So again, this all happened after the 1830s, right? This translation. So how did these people in the 1700s, how did they know anything about ancient Egypt? They couldn't even read it. If these guys were one of the first people to supposedly, translate it good and create a dictionary for people to, have a reference. So this is another of his book. It says Egyptian Grammar with Table Signs and Bibliography, Exercises for Reading and Glossary by Adolf Ehrman, translated by James Henry Breasted, all right, from 1894. And just some examples of what's in the book, all right, as you can see. So we're getting all the translation from this German guy. Now another of the sources that we get a lot of the hieroglyphic definitions or dictionary translations of the so-called, supposed hieroglyphics is from E.A. Wallace Budge, or Sir Ernest Alfred Wallace Budge. His dictionary is very thorough. I've used it before in some of my videos. For example, right here we got Tamara, the land of Mera. Example, Egypt, Tamari, Tamara. You see the cross, all right? You see the symbol with the cross. Very significant, right? We already got that. It means civilized, the civilized land, Tamara. And again, E.A. Wallace Budge, all right? We just saw his dictionary. Egyptologist, Orientalist, and philologist who worked on the British Museum. He was the curator there for a while. He had a lot of connections. He was knighted. He was knighted for his service to Egyptology. Knighted. Not just anybody gets knighted. Now down here it says Budge was also interested in the paranormal and believed in spirits and hauntings. Budge had a number of friends in the Ghost Club of British Library Manuscript Collections, Ghost Club Archives, a group in London committed to the study of alternative religions and the spirit world. He told his many friends stories of hauntings and other uncanny experiences. Many people in his day who were involved with the occult and spiritualism, all right, people that were involved with that, a lot of people were, after losing their faith in Christianity, were dedicated to Budge's work, particularly his translation of the Egyptian Book of the Dead. Such writers as the poet William Butler Yeats. William Butler Yeats? Really? And James Joyce studied and were influenced by this work of ancient religion. So William E. Budge translated the Book of the Dead, right? And William Butler Yeats and this guy were influenced by, who are these guys? So Y.B. Yeats, William Butler Yeats, an Irish poet, dramatic prose writer, and one of the foremost figures of the 20th century literature. Oh, really? So during 1885, Yeats was involved in the formation of the Dublin Hermetic Order. Hermetic teachings, Hermetic. See how it all goes around circle with these people. They're all influenced by the same people, same thing, teachings. The society held its first meeting on June 16th, with Yeats acting as its chairman. The same year, the Dublin Theosophical Lodge was opened in conjunction with Brahmin Mohini Chatteri, who traveled from the Theosophical Society. All right, it says Theosophy is a religion established in the United States during the late 19th century. It was founded primarily by the Russian immigrant Helena Blavatsky. All right, Blavatsky, and then her connection goes all the way back to Jamal Afghani, the Persian, the Sufi, just like Diop is a Sufi mystic. It all goes round circle. All these people are agents all this Pan-Africanism based on this whole Masonic symbolism and Hermetic teachings, theosophical, this fake Egyptian Freemasonic mythology. It says Jesus attended his first seance the following year. He later became heavily involved in the theosophy and with Hermetism. Hermetism, remember we learned about that Hermetrismegistus, particularly with eclectic Rosicrucianism. Rosicrucian, just like the Oscar Society, just like Rogelio was a Rosicrucian of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. During seances held from 1912, a spirit calling himself Leo Africanus apparently claimed that it was Jeet's daemon. Demon? What is a demon? It's an ancient Greek daemon, which originally referred to a lesser deity or guiding spirit, such as the demons of ancient Greek religion and mythology, and a later Hellenistic religion and philosophy. Right? Demon sounds like daemon or demon or anti-self, inspiring some of the speculations in Paramila. So you see how these people are into the occult. All right, you see this all goes around. All right, so before we get off this topic now, just want to give a sample. One Pan-African, famous Pan-African. Most of these Pan-Africans, they have the same story. You can do future videos on all of them. It will take me hours to talk about all of them, but this is just one example. Again, Martin Robinson Delany was an African-American abolitionist, journalist, physician, soldier, and writer, and arguably the first proponent of Black nationalism. Delany is credited with the Pan-African slogan of Africa for Africans. Born as a free person of color in Charleston, Virginia, he was a free person of color. He wasn't a slave, all right? Raised in Chamberlain and Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Delany trained as a physician's assistant. That sounds like an apprentice. Maybe his parents gave him up as an apprentice during the cholera epidemics of 1833 and 1854. This is before slavery was over. So what do you mean he grew up as a physician's assistant? Delany treated patients even though many doctors and residents fled city out of fear. All right. It says in 1850, Delany was one of the first 3 Black men admitted to Harvard Medical School, but all were dismissed after a few weeks because of widespread protest by white students. All right. So this is one of Martin R. Delany's books, actually, right here. That's his picture right here. It says The Origins and Objects of Ancient Freemasonry, Its Introduction into the United States and Legitimacy Among Colored Men. Again, here's an original copy. The Origin and Object of Ancient Freemasonry. Ancient Freemasonry. Freemason. Introduction to the United States and Legitimacy Among Colored Men. A treatise delivered before the St. Cyprian Lodge, number 13, in 1853. By who? Mr. M.R. Delany. All right, from a free person of color. He's a Freemason, talking about Africa for Africans, trying to send everybody to Africa. A Freemason, another Freemason, with all this Pan-Africanism.